Hello and welcome along to this week's edition of the Left Wing Back podcast. We have brought back the video for this week's episode. It is in association with our kind partners Talbot Hotel Carlow, which we are located on the lovely Tyndall Suite here as we speak for today's episode. And a big shout out to Talbot Hotel, Talbot Fitness and An Bhearu Bar as well. And at the moment the recovery room is being set up in Talbot Fitness there. So we have a nice little offer there for anyone who wants to go in and maybe get rid of that soreness after a game. 12 quid if you mention the Left Wing Back at the desk to Mark down there in Talbot Fitness. So we do thank them indeed. And all our sponsors. We have another sponsor to give a shout out to this week. Infinite Energy have come along with us for the remainder of the championship. Infinite Energy are a Carlow based company, a leading provider of industrial, commercial, agricultural and residential solar PV installations, serving the South East and Midlands. Commercial and industrial solar teams extended nationwide. With a 3 to 4 year payback, savings of up to 60% on electricity costs and generous grants of 2,100 quid for households and 162,600 for businesses. Now is the ideal time to invest in solar energy. InfiniteEnergy.ie is the website, or call them on 059 916 8075. Big shout out as well to our other sponsors who've been with us throughout the year: Arboretum Carlow, Padraic Dunne Motors, PFT Travel, Curadh Sports, Whelan LTD, Property Partners Buggy and Pat Ahern Photography. And again, one more shout out on the Talbot Hotel front. There is a competition being run up on the Talbot Fitness Instagram page and indeed on Facebook in association with ourselves at the Left Wing Back. There's a giveaway there for a few months membership, and of course if you go down to Mark, 15% off if you mention the Left Wing Back on all upfront paid memberships. So yeah, thanks to Talbot Fitness and thanks to Talbot Hotel in Carlow. We're joined here by our esteemed guest, Mr. Paul Byrne, better known as Fisher. Fisher, of course, Clonmore stalwart. Plenty involvement with county teams as well down through the years. Everyone will know him. He needs no introduction at this particular stage. And lots of good feedback on the last episode, Fisher. You're very welcome. How's things with you?
Not too bad, Kev. Yourself? I suppose we're at the key part of the championship now, so it's getting a bit more exciting, I suppose, than maybe earlier for some of the lads that are involved. And I think, in fairness, a bit of recovery into Talbot there at 12 quid, lads, might be something you should take up. Absolutely, indeed. Nice sauna in there as well. Saunas are gone big this weather. And, of course, the cold shower afterwards, Paul. I don't know if cold showers and saunas were big when you were playing, but they were big. Indulged now? They were big, all right, but I'm a bit like Roy Keane on that. I'm a bit sceptical on the benefit of them, but lads like them, so fair enough. Whatever makes you feel well, if it's a placebo or otherwise, or so what.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we'll delve into all the action, Paul, and I think for this week's episode, of course, we are leading up to semi-finals in Carlow this weekend, but we might take a little look back first and start with the Talbot Hotel Junior B Football Championship. Of course, Talbot do Junior B, Junior A and Intermediate in terms of sponsorship with Carlow GA, and have done so for quite some time. We'll start with the Junior B. We'll go with the smaller fish, as people do say, although there's a few big fish playing that as well, I think. So you were over in Tinryland last Saturday, and wins there for Ballinabranna and Éire. What do you make of it all? Yeah,
I was over there, and I suppose two games were fairly close in time in terms of throw-in times. But lucky enough, you can sort of run between the hedge there in Tinryland. Look, in fairness, I seen the first good few minutes of the game on what I suppose is probably the number one pitch now over there, but certainly the Éire Og or the Éire Og O'Loughlin game. Opening 10 or 15 minutes was very, very good. It was very, very even, and I think the final score, I think, was something around 316 to 2-9, which kind of looks like Éire Og probably had a bit of a coast, but certainly they didn't, from the bits that we were looking at. As I said, you're kind of running between two games, but certainly O'Loughlin were thereabouts for very, very long spells, but the standard looked pretty decent. There was Éire Og. Every team probably plays the same way in Éire Og, but certainly the retention of the ball and all was quite good. O'Loughlin were probably a little bit more direct, but certainly a decent enough game. I suppose the other game between Ballinabranna and Clonmore, not a high scoring game. I think it was for very, very long spells. It was a point and 2 points and 3 points. I think the halftime score was 4 points to 2, so maybe not the same entertainment value, but Ballinabranna pulled away a little bit in the end, and again I suppose they'll probably, be looking at a particularly difficult semi-final, I think, as well, against what would be a very fancied Rathvilly team. I think they certainly look like the form team in it, and probably will have a bit too much. On the other side, I think the Aero Kildavin Clonegall game, I think that might be a bit tighter. Kildavin obviously doing decent enough in the intermediate, so that tends to trickle down a bit. And I'd expect that to be a little bit tighter, with possibly Kildavin coming out on top.
Good stuff. Very comprehensive as always, Fish. Moving on to Junior A, and a couple of humdingers in this one. Maybe not high scoring in both games, but definitely thrilling. And Aska, I think, surprised many and nearly taking a big scalp with Ballin in the Junior A on Friday night. 10 points to 1-6, I think, a finish in the end. And the old dog for the hard road, Mousey Deary, coming up with the goods down the home stretch as well, breaking Aska hearts. I think Jack Phelan scored a penalty in that one, which, gave Aska a bit of a foothold in the game, but coming down the tracks, the bit of experience appeared to make a big difference.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think we were talking on the podcast a couple of weeks ago in relation to, we were kind of pre-tipping who might be, look like they might be championship winners. And I think we did mention Aska. We had a bit of a fancy for them, I suppose, coming up from Junior B, a couple of really good players, and in fairness, they very nearly pulled it off against Ballin. But as you say, Mousey, I think Mousey got 2 points. Certainly, the second one was a punch score, which in essence just won it. Very, very tight. I'd say Ballin, are a little bit relieved to get out of it.
Yeah, seems to be the case, and look, that's often the catalyst, isn't it, going forward? And they've had kind of patchy form, I suppose. Maybe. No, I guess maybe it's unfair to say that they're patchy, because they were in the game against Loughlin, they lost that one. They were comprehensive winners over the Fighting Cocks, and did the business against Tinryland. So maybe patchy is not accurate. Maybe we're doing a bit of a disservice to Aska, in fact. But you get the feeling there's a bit more imbalance still, and maybe that's no harm that they won it that way the other night. Oh no,
I'd say it'll stand to them a bit more than maybe something that might have been a little bit easier. But certainly, full credit to Aska. They obviously pushed them all the way. I suppose the semi-final now this week, you've Kilbride and Ballin, and I know I probably tipped Kilbride, I think, to win the Junior A. There's just something about them. They keep coming back. Great heart showing down there, struggling with numbers at times and various things like that. A couple of lads that are still playing and keeping the show on the road. And any team that has, Dara and maybe Jack and a few of those that are, able to tip on a few scores, I think that'll be tight. That'll be tight.
I think so. And look, we were by virtue of the teams that ended up in the semi-finals, 3 coming from one parish, we were always going to have a local derby in one of the semi-finals, just the way it transpired. The other game, of course, before we do go into detail maybe a bit more on those, is going to be between the Fighting Cocks and Loughlin Bridge. Now, the Fighting Cocks at stages looked like they were in trouble against O'Hanlon's. Then our friend from Curadh Sports, Mr. Emmett Moran, came off the bench and got 1-2. Now, Emmett has been struggling with injuries for the past couple of years. He was captain last year. I'm not quite sure is he captain this year, but he made a telling difference. I think he kicked the equaliser, finished at 1-2 in total. And I don't think Alan Quigley was playing the other night. I did see a video of the collision that he had, an accidental one, I have to say. Yeah. I don't think he'll thank his teammate for the pass that was given, but it did look like a sore one. I don't think he played any part in it. Matty Dowling stepped up to the plate there. Glenn O'Rourke, I think, finished with a hat-trick.
Yeah, in fairness, I think Glenn was probably the difference on the night, to be quite honest with you. I suppose, again, having just seen clips and videos of it, That's a tricky one going in again this week. Obviously, you're saying there was always going to be a local derby. Maybe the Cocks would certainly prefer to be in the side that it isn't a local derby. But again, Loughlin Bridge, they've been so close. Obviously, you have a bit of affinity there yourself, but they've been so close, and certainly even 2-3 years ago, but for a kick of a ball, maybe would not be a Junior A team, would be an intermediate team. So I can see that one possibly been tight enough as well. Again, the Cocks, probably struggled a little bit. There was probably times when you probably fancied the Blues in that game, but they stuck to it, and okay, fair enough, extra time, and it can be a bit draining on lads, but they just had that little bit more in the end. And I think, to be fair, as you say, subs coming on, but I do think Glenn O'Rourke seemed to have been the difference on the night. Yeah,
seems to be the case, alright. And a big lift for Pascal Bon Brennan, a Collection man going in there. I don't think too many people out in the Cocks would have heard of him. I'm not quite sure too many in Carlow in general would have heard of him, but that's a big win there to get one over the Blues and get into a semi-final. And I guess from Loughlin Bridge's point of view, it is very difficult to beat the same team twice, especially when they're of even standard. So as close as the last one was, I suspect this one could be close. And both semi-finals, incidentally, are Friday night. Now, juniors B semi-finals are over in Fenagh in the Netwatch Training Centre. That's a double header there, 7:15 and 7:30, I think. And then in Netwatch Cullen Park, I think it could be 7 and half 8 with Ballin and Kilbride up first, and then Loughlin Bridge versus the Fighting Cocks. So, I mean, they're incredibly difficult games to call, Paul, in fairness.
They are, and in fairness, junior A games by nature are very, very tight, because there's teams there that maybe, but for a bit of luck and a few other things, possibly wouldn't be there. So you're ending up with 3 or 4 teams there that would not look out of place in an intermediate setup. So it's very, very hard to call it. I think if for me, I would probably, on the two of them, I would expect it to be Kilbride, Loughlin Bridge, but not by a big margin.
Yeah, I might abstain from verdicts.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. But if the gun was put to me head, I probably would go Loughlin Bridge, Kilbride, and I think it would be a cracking final. And you know what? Regardless of who gets through, I think it's going to be a cracking final, because if the Cocks do get through, there's another local derby guaranteed for a final.
Absolutely. And look at. I was sitting beside a couple of Cocks lads last year when they went to the knockout game, and to be fair, small margins again. I think who beat them last year? St. Mullins beat them last year, and I was sitting with a few lads there and talking to them afterwards, and they'll want to put that right. There's no question about it. And realistically, on that day, they possibly could have. Mm-hmm. St. Mullins probably looked like they did a little bit more in terms of maybe fitness and whatever else. Perhaps that's coming from the hurling side. I don't know. I'm sure Joe Nolan or Stephen would probably tell me it absolutely is. But I think the Cocks will certainly be very difficult to beat. So whoever beats them, I suppose, will earn it. No question.
Yep, I think so, for sure. And we'll turn our attention then to the Talbot Hotel Intermediate Football Championship. And you mentioned St. Mullins, so maybe we'll start there. The relegation playoff was last Friday. This kind of went under the radar a little bit now. I don't think I mentioned it in last week's podcast. I wasn't aware that the fixture was going to be on the Friday. I'm sure there is a reason for that, possibly hurling related, that maybe they wanted to play that relegation final. St. Mullins did get it done so that they can go back and concentrate on hurling for the upcoming Leinster Championship in a month or so. But for what it was worth, Éire Óg appeared to have gotten a good start. And they didn't like, I was going to use an expletive there, but I won't. They didn't dance all over them. It was level at 2-6 apiece, I think, at one stage, and I think possibly a couple of the St. Mullins players might have even been bemused over that. A team that maybe hasn't done much training. Éire Óg, flat out training by all accounts, and very competitive in all their games. And here St. Mullins were within a few kicks of a ball of surviving at intermediate level. Now, Pat Cody's 5-year planning course is gone. He said senior within 5 years. They were looking fairly good after 3, in fairness, but they're going back down junior A. I get the feeling they're not terribly upset over it, Paul.
I wouldn't think so. No. I wouldn't think they are terribly upset. But to be fair, as you say, were thereabouts in that game for long periods. It did go under the radar, and again, I suppose the change of fixture was probably, to suit. Maybe St. Mullins probably thought it. The game of itself was played in Éire Óg, which is possibly be unusual for a relegation.
I don't care where we play. We just want it done.
Yeah, so it does seem like they wanted it done and dusted. And in fairness, they went if they fulfilled it, and not only fulfilled it, but they competed. But will they be desperately upset about playing junior football next year? I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
I think there's a lot of other junior A teams might be upset at the fact that they're playing junior.
Well, that's the issue. Like in any given year, St. Mullins can put something together, and if you draw them in the group next year, it won't be a gimme in any shape or form.
That's just the reality of us, as you. Now, Ballinaran and Fenagh was an absolute cracker, 3-16 to 3-8 in favour of Fenagh in the end. I think a pair of identical Padraic Hines goals off the bench, I think, was a big factor in this one. It was a difficult game to call, but Fenagh seemed to be, by all accounts, pretty dominant in this one.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty dominant in it. As you say, Padraic came off the bench, and Padraic is he's a good unit. He's very hard to handle, and he will get you goals. There's no question about that. Maybe at times you know, I've looked at him, and you say maybe lads are not playing him in the position where he can do the most damage. But obviously he was, you know, close to goal in this instance, and you know, banged in two, as you say, almost identical. I suppose from a Fenagh point of view, you know, they would certainly have aspirations of, you know, returning to maybe higher ranks where they were previously, and maybe were unlucky to go back down at that point. You know, they did a couple of decent games in senior. You know, I remember a game against Rangers, I think a game against Bagnallstown, where maybe they could have you know, got something more out of it. And I suppose maybe it does highlight I know you've been talking about it before, but it does highlight maybe a slight flaw in the championship system, whereby I suppose, you know, is it good for teams to be going back down so quickly? Is that the best thing to do in terms of making even Carlow County teams competitive? I'm not so sure it is. Naturally enough, you know, ourselves in Clonmore and Tinryland are probably in that boat now. And maybe that's something that can be looked at. But, you know, Fenagh will certainly, you know, they'll take heart from an 8-point win against Ballinabrana. And let's be honest, you know, Ballinabrana always feature in the knockout stages of no matter what championship they're in. So it wouldn't have been an easy one, but you know, 8 points is comprehensive enough. And
it sets up a tasty semi-final now with Grange, who topped their group, of course. So they had the luxury of that bit of a gap, and I mean, it is a big advantage. I would think it's an advantage. People, you always use this thing where, momentum, if, you know, we had momentum and we lost it because it was a week off, and then, well, they won it because of the week off, depending on what way the result goes, of course. I'd rather have the week off, personally.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, and I think probably any team that might not have a huge numbers, the week off is a good benefit. The risk of injury is probably, you know, heavily reduced. Okay, of course, things can happen in training, but
they can go down to the recovery part here in the Talbot now and get sorted, can't they?
They surely can, but you do have, you know, that chance of maybe minding lads a bit more, working on lads that maybe not, you know, maybe carrying a few injuries, or maybe not, you know, maybe even lads not playing that well. You know, a couple of nights in the field without the pressure of a game at that particular weekend sometimes can make a difference. That's going to be a tasty one, to be honest. I won't see it actually. I'm away on Saturday, so I'll only see the Sunday games this week. But I'm kind of inclined to think Grange might have enough, despite a decent win for Fenagh last week. I just think there's something very cohesive about Grange. You know, as you say, straight to the semi-final, that bit of a rest, you know, maybe working on lads. The last game in the group, you know, that was a defeat, but they, you know, had obviously qualified at that stage. They made a good few changes, 4 or 5 changes for that game, and I think that'll stand to them, because some of those lads are now maybe exposed to, you know, a level of football that maybe they didn't have many minutes under the belt before, and I just probably fancy Grange for that one.
Good stuff, yeah. Well, look at our friend Tom Dillon that was on a few weeks back. You know, I was saying to him, I don't ever recall Grange really getting a spanking in championship. They're always really competitive. It has all the hallmarks of a close game again. I do think Grange just about, but like Fenagh have serious firepower, and you know, a very good side. So we know how good they are, and how good they are at soccer and everything, and hurling. They have a lot of those guys that are in or of that ilk, I suppose. Yeah. I do think Grange probably narrowly, but we'll go across the other ones. So St. Patrick's, they had a hard fought 112 to 9 points win over in Avon. Now it sets up a clash with Killavin Clonegall. These two met in the knockout stages last year. It was one-way traffic. St. Patrick's absolutely dominated Killavin Clonegall. 12 months on, things are looking a little bit different. So Killavin Clonegall obviously went straight through, and Mr. Jade Nolan has burst onto the scene. The young chap, wearing 14. I don't know, is he always out and out at 14? But I tell you one thing, he's not too far away from goal. He got 4-2 in a game there recently. So, yeah, like, I mean, St. Patrick's are a team that are quite close to making that burst as well. I think we might have tipped them for the final last year, Fish. I'd tell you we're late. We got that one wrong, as seen as your club obviously won in the end. But again, another incredibly difficult one to call. I think by virtue of being in the final last year and the way Tullow have gone about their business so far this year, I do think I'd probably side with them, but there's a big but, basically.
Yeah, probably. I think, you know, they're, as you say, they're in the final last year, and you know, again, you know, maybe we were just that little bit better than them, I suppose, on the day. It was a great performance by Clonmore that final. Yeah, it was. Look, it was. There was no question. I don't think anybody would have stayed with Clonmore that day. Simple as that. But I do recall that the Killavin St. Pat's game last year. I think I did commentary with you until about half time. But
you did too, and then you left me high and dry.
I did, yeah. it was really one-way traffic.
Yeah.
So, mentally, does that affect the game? I don't know. It probably does. I think, you're dead right. Jake Nolan and, he really has bursted on. I suppose you've Darren Roberts there as well, Kildavan, and then obviously you have Niall Hickey, and you have a few guys that maybe can produce something. But I think St. Pat's will probably have enough. Probably need to get a little less reliant on maybe Jacko and Brian Byrne. If they can, and maybe get a few more guys into the mix there that can maybe get scores. Obviously Brian and Jacko from dead balls and stuff like that, excellent as well, and that keeps you ticking over. But maybe they do need to kind of, get 5 or 6 other lads maybe to the forefront. But, I think they'll probably have enough. I think St. Pat's will have enough.
Jack O'Neill with a goal the other day, and a great photo of Will Dorn mid-air. Pat Ahern, our good friend, took that one. I don't know what way he landed, but I believe he's okay. Pat's been brilliant since he's sort of took up this role since he's since he's retired from other activities. But some of the pictures are just absolutely fantastic. And long may it continue, because I think it really is promoting the games when people can actually see the artistry that's connected with it, and he's well able to capture it. You know, absolutely. Thanks a million, Pat, for the photos. And there's a young lad called Paul Kelly playing with Gloucester Donegal's first team as well. Want to keep an eye out for that fella.
Yeah, he's supposed to be pretty decent. Yeah, he's supposed to be pretty decent. Just
fairness, Paul must be around the 40 mark.
I suspect he is.
Or is he closer to 50?
Well, no, I don't think he's closer to 50. I'd say in fairness to him, he's probably around the 40 mark. But look at him, it doesn't matter what age you are if you keep yourself right. And I'd say Paul keeps himself fairly right anyway, I don't know,
does the man 8 at all? Because if you're down there getting a bit of work done or whatever, the man is on the go from 7 till about 5 in the evening. There's appointments going right throughout the day. He's some character.
No, look, at in fairness, Paul's great. Like Paul did a bit of stuff with us when I was playing back in Clonmore and stuff. He was physio there for a while and stuff, and I'd came across him obviously loads of times in games. But I know Paul is one of the good guys, absolutely.
Yep. So that concludes the did we give a verdict on that? Who did you go with?
I went with St. Pat's on that one.
Yeah, I think I'll go with St. Pat's as well, just to confirm. So that's the Talbot Hotel Intermediate, Junior A and Junior B football championships. The knowledge base doesn't quite trickle down to Junior C. I think the Rangers are going alright in that from what I could see. And just one more quick one before I conclude, actually. I meant to ask you, when we're on the topic of Junior A there, how strong would a Fighting Cocks, Ballin and Kilbride amalgamation be at senior level, seeing as the three of them are here now in the junior semi-final? How strong would it be? Could it be competitive as Burn Rangers?
Possibly.
Wouldn't think it'd be too bad.
Possibly. I don't think it'd be too bad. I suppose a lot will depend on, the style of football they play and all the rest. Would they have enough lads maybe to close out teams a little bit and make things awkward? Absolutely. I think any amalgamation probably would, no matter where it is. I suppose there has been a departure in that regard. I suppose now at under 16 level, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I know it's over our side, and I think the 4 teams are being called after the stands in Crow Park. But I think it's a really good initiative. And anything that can improve the competitiveness, I think has to be certainly looked at. Could we allow group teams that are at Junior A level into Senior Championship to make it more competitive, or to bring it to 10 teams? Why not? Yeah, I think so as well. And to be fair, we're getting great feedback on that episode last week about the under 16 county or divisional championship, and I see Robert Sanson did an article with GA.ie as well, so they've picked up on it from a national level, and I'm led to believe there may have been contact from counties close to Carlow about how they're going to run it and interested maybe doing something similar. So to see Carlow actually leading an example and not following is quite encouraging. Yeah, and like a lot of people might be asking, why is it not taking place maybe at a different grade rather than under 16? But you have to start there. I think the big drive is to get our minor teams competitive when they go outside the county, because depending on where you're playing in terms of Division 1 or Division 2 or whatever within Carlow, sometimes you were not competitive enough then when we go to play the counties. And obviously look at Mick Keogh was manager there for a while, and I think a lot of guys, the same feedback is coming. They're not really prepared for the tougher games when you go outside the county, and I think this can only make it better.
Yeah, the antithesis of that, of course, and I know you're not you call it stick fighting. You're into the hurling, but I think you're probably into it a bit more than you'll on probably as well, right? But on the under 16 grade, the semi-finals were last week, and Burn Rangers progressed to the final to play Curadh Town St Hanta. This is under 16A final. Naomh Eoin scored 5-8 and didn't win.
Yeah.
In that semi-final, right?
Yeah.
Bindnerstown were unlucky not to go through as well. I mean, those are remarkable scores. And just while we're on it, under 14 A champions are Carlow Town, and B champions at under 14 are St Mullins after a monumental encounter, it seems, with Burn Rangers. Like, the competitiveness in those two A semi-finals is encouraging, and I'm not saying that it's not the case in football, but that is great to see. And the clubs that are contesting those A finals, that is very encouraging to see also.
Yeah, look, I'd imagine on the hurling side, the most encouraging thing about it is there are sort of, you know, different names turning up and different clubs turning up now as winners and certainly getting the finals. So obviously we've seen Burn Rangers, you know, winning the junior A hurling or the junior hurling. There's no A, of course, or otherwise, but the junior hurling. So I suppose it's good to see them, and obviously that's not just a flash in the pan, because if you've under 14 teams competing against the likes of St Mullins, so that's a great progression. And then Carlow Town, who they're not being talked about in the same vein as maybe, you know, your St Mullins or your Mount Leinster Rangers, and for them to be progressing, I think can only be good for Carlow hurling. But you know, as you say, it wouldn't be my forte, but maybe it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek sometimes with some of the other lads on the group.
Well, could you see a possibility of a hurling team over your direction?
It's always mooted. Hurling teams are always mooted. I couldn't see it, to be honest. I think there's a lot of lads that are probably interested in hurling. I think there's a lot of lads that play club hurling. I think play school hurling. I think the issue largely is probably where we're situated in terms of the border. I think that's probably an issue now. We have had, I know Sheen Doyle went and played with, Burn Rangers, and, they did well, and I think, even played county minor as a hurler. So, there are avenues, but I think those avenues, in terms of lads playing, have to be explored within the county context, as opposed to maybe any suggestion of going cross borders to play hurling,
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, look, who knows? It would be great to see a few more clubs anyway, and maybe all this can coexist and do so successfully. There's lots of talk across the border about walkovers and junior A football championships, and that's, I think, largely hinted at. Hurling clubs, for the most part, a few football clubs have gone and done that, of course, in Laois as well. But look, our primary concern is Carlow. But while we're on the topic of Laois for a moment, there was a local derby at the weekend in the senior football championship in Laois at the quarter-final stage. It was Great Cullen and Collection. Great Cullen 114, Collection 111, and we probably should give a shout out to our good friend Lee Walker, who was a guest of this podcast previously. 6 points from play for Great Cullen. Quite impressive. Great leadership, breaking into a semi-final, and a Carlow man leading them there.
Look, it's fantastic for Lee. I sent my message, I think, on Sunday night or Monday night. We were over and back, but
you were over the county under 21s together.
We were 20s. Yeah, Lee was selector in there with ourselves and with Bearhorn and David Hickey and Johnny Maguire and a few others were there. But look at Lee is just a great leader. He keeps himself right. He's a fantastic athlete, and 6 points from play in any senior championship is fair going.
It is.
So, best of luck to him, and hopefully we'll see him in a Carlow jersey again at some point.
Yeah, will we see him in a road jersey, do you think?
I'd say that'd be an ecumenical matter.
We may get him on at some stage. I'm not quite sure he'll be available over the next few weeks because they are into the semi-final against Port Arlington, but it would be great
there's probably a media ban out there in Great Cullen at the minute. So,
and fairness, for the different contexts, of course, but his namesake, Ray Walker, it was great to see him back this year for the Blues. I don't think we spoke about it too much. Like Ray was gone for 4 years due to a ban. I'm back playing well, leading the Blues in the centre of the park. Incredible footballer. 40 years of age now, I think. Oh,
absolutely. And the night they launched the games in town there, in Dr. Cullen, I seen Ray. He was there obviously as the I presume he was captain actually of the.
I think he was captain.
Blues.
Yeah.
And he was there for the photo calls and all that kind of stuff, and still in peak condition, absolutely peak condition. And to be honest, would probably slot into any senior team.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Wonderful footballer. So we'll move on to the senior games, P, and we're trucking along nicely. I do think so. The Michael Lee Motor Senior Football Championship quarter-finals at the weekend. Bit of a turkey shoot. Rathvilly handing out a bit of a spanking to Bindnerstown Gales. That's 2 weeks in a row that Bindnerstown Gales have shipped heavy beatings. I have to be honest, I did not see that coming. I thought Bindnerstown would get their act together after shipping the first beating. Doesn't seem like they did. I wasn't there. I'm not going to comment too much on it, but I think the scoreline says a lot.
Yeah, I think the scoreline says a good bit. I suppose, going into the games last weekend and just, in terms of maybe our own groups or other groups that lads have been involved in or chatting to people, I probably felt that Rangers would certainly get closer to Éire than maybe Bagenalstown would get to Rathvilly. Did I see the scoreline that eventually emerged in the Bagenalstown Rathvilly game? Absolutely not. I would have probably said 6, 7, 8 points maybe. But that was significant. And to be fair, I suppose there'll probably be a lot of concern in Bagenalstown that they ship both of those kind of heavy scores. But I think whatever about the one previously, I think this one, it can go one of two ways. That can be either damaging, or it can maybe rally the troops to have a different approach maybe next year. But
they are underperforming, in fairness.
They are underperforming. There's no question.
They are capable of so much more.
There's no question. You read out the list of names, and most of them are household names, to be quite honest, of footballers, and exciting footballers, not just footballers, but very exciting footballers. But it just hasn't translated for them, unfortunately for them, I suppose. But it's tricky. It's tricky to see where you would go from that. But certainly there will have to be significant improvement in the coming season to even remain at the grade.
And it's a statement victory for Rathvilly, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and like you were going into, as I say, sort of last weekend, and after getting all the group games out of the way, and I would have said, Old Leighlin seemed to have been the form team at that point in time, and then Rathvilly put up a score like that, and you go, well, maybe there needs to be a little bit of a rethink on this. But Rathvilly probably laboured slightly in earlier games, but absolutely no labouring last week. Like, you look at what I think Liam Gavin got 6 points. I think Kevin Murphy got 1-6. Which is the equivalent of what Éire got against Mount Leinster Rangers on his own.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive,
Malloy popping up as well from, he's wearing 3, but he's a kind of a license to roam, as the fella said, and his runs from deep are so hard to stop.
Yeah, extremely fit, and to be honest, as you say, he's wearing 3, but if there was a provision for no number, he'd have it. You know what I mean? Because he is sort of largely everywhere. But impressive, and you'd have to say the forwards were very impressive, and they'll take a bit of marking.
It's not like Rathvilly to put a scoreline like that, and that's no disregard to them.
No, absolutely not.
They're very consistent. Look, there's a few times where they've had hiccups, and there was a possibility of a hiccup at the weekend. That wasn't the case, but the point is, I don't think they ever put up massive tallies like that. No,
look, it's over the years, Rathvilly have won championships, 7 points to 5, and various things like that. Now, obviously, of late, football has changed, and there's a lot more maybe exciting young fellas who sort of wouldn't settle for that type of scoreline. But certainly, 2-9, 2-10 is kind of maybe nearer where it usually is, or something in around that, something around the 15-point mark. But that was a real statement.
Yeah, I think so. Well, look, if that scoring tally was one example, the complete polar opposite occurred in the other senior quarter final, which was, of course, Éire versus Mount Leinster Rangers. Mount Leinster Rangers were in the depths of despair a few weeks ago. I think, what did they score against Old Leighlin? It was a very low score. Was it 1-3, 1-4?
Yeah, it was.
Might even been 1-2. I can't remember exactly, but they got an unmerciful beating, and then turned it around, as we thought they might, in fairness, against Tinryland. Got a result there, got all the bodies back, and how Chris Conway was able to implement a plan that would allow them to beat Tinryland firstly, and to compete with the reigning champions in the space of a couple of weeks with lads that he'd only seen for the first time, including one, I believe, who was unbelievable the other night, Chris Nolan. 3 great points from play, outside of the left, outside of the right. And I mean, going into this one, this just does not make sense. Like, you would never think for a second that this should be the case. Like, if you were to flip this the other way, and you were to say, right, a team has only picked up a hurl 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and they were to go and take on the county champions and be within a kick of a ball of beating them, and only for a big decision apparently could have beaten them. I mean, this just doesn't seem to make sense. Can you make sense of it all?
No, but they have history of kind of tearing up the form book. When it comes to football, and I suppose there's probably a mentality within the club that, regardless of what sport you ask them to play, if you put a bit of a plan in with them, they'll probably be capable of doing it, and they'll be capable of competing with any team. I did fancy them to get close to Éire. I suppose Éire haven't been fantastic. I don't think. in their previous games. You know, we've seen them a couple of times, obviously in the group and stuff, and obviously there's a draw with Pal, and you know, narrow enough victory over Clonmore, and everything that sort of went on then. But you got to hand it to Rangers. You know, and you have to hand it to Chris Conway. Like, they implemented the plan, they negated quite a lot of the Éire play. But I think Éire will be concerned at just kicking 1-6 and, you know, kicking 6 really until such time as the penalty came about.
One score from play, I think, in the second half.
Now, in fairness, you know, well done to Niall Quinlan, a bit of pressure there too to put that away and keep your club in the, you know, in the championship largely, because, you know, extra time, we don't know what would have happened there. You know, Rangers would have probably had a bit of fitness too, still left in the tank, albeit their hurling exploits are finished. But probably the result that everyone expected, but probably not the margin.
Yeah. I use the term that I think I've seen this film before. Now, it was a different version of the film, because the ones I've seen previously, there was one really different version where Rangers did actually beat Éire in 2016, and I think almost every year since they've met at some point, and a lot of the time in knockout stages, and Éire have always won those games and never really looked in danger. I don't know, is there a hangover of caginess still there from that? A lot of those Éire players have moved on, so I don't really know how this could kind of come about, but maybe it's in their back of their minds. It is a banana skin, and it's in no way doing disservice to Rangers. But I mean, again, from the outside in, this, like, does it? It's not doing a disservice to Rangers, right? But does it say much for Carlow football if a team can come with very little training and nearly beat the champions? And that's not a disservice now. And I'm not trying to criticise Éire either with that. But is there a message in there somewhere, or am I being too harsh?
I don't know if there is or not. I think, like, if you have the raw materials, and the raw materials can come from the other aspects, not just the football aspects. They can come from the athleticism, they can come from the mentality, the competitiveness. They absolutely, you know, they'd probably rather die of exhaustion than lose.
Yeah.
So all you're really introducing then is muscle memory, in terms of, do you remember how to kick a football?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe it's not a bad reflection, and it's all the other aspects that they bring to it.
Yeah.
That kind of gets them to the point of being able to sort of
manage
these sort of games. Now, all the managing of these sort of games always come late in the football championship.
Yeah.
Not so much at the beginning because of other reasons and distractions and everything there. And then usually they're always missing a couple of lads as well. By virtue, you know, lads have long season playing hurling, and you know, they have to get their holidays and they have to get everything else. But I think what it is showing is, if you have the mentality and you have all those other attributes,
you can go a long way.
You can go a long way.
Yeah,
a long way.
Yeah. I was listening to Chris Conway's post-match interview on Casey Laura's new post-match podcast, I think it's called. And it was one of the longest post-match interviews I've heard, 12 minutes long I think it was, but it was also one of the most compelling post-match interviews I have heard. Now, Chris was quite scathing in his remarks. He felt it was a stonewall free on Kevin McDonald in the lead up to the penalty. I haven't seen the clip, but there seems to be consensus around this. Now, there is a caveat in that David Hickey appeared to have turned to follow the play, so how, I suppose, visible the incident was to David remains to be seen. So it's not so much that, it's, I think in general, I think Chris might have been annoyed that maybe one of the other officials didn't actually say, David, hold on now, there's actually been something. Now, I don't know the rule book that well to be commenting on this. What I do know is that he was very frustrated. Also very frustrated at the county board for not allowing fixtures to be moved, and frustrated that he believes there's a sufficient gap there between county final day and the first round of Leinster Championship that would have allowed fixtures to be moved. And his other criticism was Amir Ishka wasn't allowed on the far side of the field. Now, these are Chris Conway's words, not mine, but he's put it out there on record, so it's something that we can talk about, obviously. You'd understand why someone would be quite heated after a game like that and wound up. His side have just lost. They're severe underdogs. Is there substance, do you think, in any of the stuff that he is saying? Where are you on it?
I don't know. Look, in fairness, the refereeing decisions, as you say, like the vast majority of referees call it as they see it. No question about that. And you look at David.
I don't think David has
no
seen something like that. Yeah.
David is no different. David is no different. That
it wasn't Chris's either. I suppose.
No, and in fairness, it's not. And of course, the other side of it is though, is the timing of the incident. So if that happens earlier in the game, does anybody get as excited about it? Maybe not. It's just that it was so critical, I suppose.
3 or 4 minutes from the end.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so critical towards the end for Chris. What I will say to you is that obviously the interview was quite long in terms of the post-match analysis stuff. What it does demonstrate, though, is that, despite maybe people's views in relation to, hurling clubs and football, it meant something.
He said there 38 lads in the field.
It meant something. So
before that game.
Exactly. So it meant something, and the fact that he was, rather annoyed by the outcome and annoyed by various things that might have occurred within it, and maybe, as you say, fixtures and all of that type of thing, shows that did mean something, which is, a good thing.
Absolutely, it is.
On the other side of it, So
yeah. So I suppose we better move on, Fish, to the semi-finals. Where does this leave Éire Óg now? So they're going to play Palatine on Saturday evening in Netwatch Cullen Park in the semi-finals. Big news emerging from Palatine. Tomás Kenny, we're hearing that he's done his cruise yet. Now that's huge. Yeah,
it's absolutely massive for Pal, and you have great sympathy for Tomás. Has been really, really good for them, and any fella that incurs an injury it's just horrendous, and particularly when you're going well in the championship and the timing of it and all the rest. So in fairness, if it is as bad as we're hearing for Tomás, we wish him well in that regard. In terms of where does it leave Éire Óg, I think it probably leaves them in a probably pretty decent position.
I would think so.
To be honest.
The same as what we said about Ballon.
Yeah.
The nature of how they won, like.
Yeah, the nature of how they won. Would Éire Óg traditionally put into maybe shaky performances 2 weeks in a row? No. Never. To be honest. Pal, naturally enough, were, they seem to be the form team in the group, certainly in the early stages. Maybe the Clonmore game there, we went very close to them. The game didn't matter to either side. But having said that, their two performances earlier were pretty good. Will Éire Óg be worried about maybe sort of stumbling a little bit to the semi-final? I suspect not. I suspect not.
The record against Pal has been phenomenal. Like Pal, on a few occasions very few occasions I might add, but on a few occasions have upset the apple cart. But by and large, Éire Óg have dominated this fixture at the knockout stages.
They have. If you're looking at it sort of a little bit from the outside, you'd be saying, Pal have shown better form than Éire Óg. But if you were to call it, you might be swayed a little bit towards Éire Óg on the basis of history and everything else that might go there. Is there potential for a draw, extra time there?
There is replays. You've hit on something.
Yeah.
All the semi-finals this weekend will have replays.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah,
which is good. To be fair, let everybody regroup and have another crack at it. Could that one be a draw? Possibly.
It is going to be tight. I have a slight hankering for Éire Óg just about, I think, in that one. So we'll go to the other semi-final now. There's, as much as there's intrigue in Éire Óg, Pal, there always is. This O'Loughlin Rathvilly fixture is a monumental one to be looking forward to, because O'Loughlin have come with serious form this year, serious pace this year, as have Rathvilly, as we saw at the weekend. As it stands with the bookmakers, Rathvilly are championship favourites. They were before a ball was kicked as well, but they are now, and O'Loughlin are rank outsiders. Now, you can see where the quants will come up with this, of course, because the last three final winners are in the semi-finals, so naturally they'll probably put them there. Specifically, Palatine, after winning or topping their group and winning the championship a couple of years ago, you can see why. But at the same token, it's 3 years, I think, since Rathvilly have won it, and they're still championship favourites. So they always keep a close eye on these things. I understand why O'Loughlin are rank outsiders, but I don't think it means a whole lot.
No, I don't think it means a whole lot, but I think to be honest, if O'Loughlin were playing either of the other two teams, I think they'd probably be second favourites to Rathvilly in the overall championship winners book. I think that's the issue, because they're playing the favourites. So obviously, if you're playing the favourites are expected to win, and therefore then you have to be the rank outsider of the four, because you'll be gone.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the sheer mathematics of it in terms of how the bookies work. Again, as we said, the O'Loughlin guys have been really impressive. There's no point in saying it again, but you have Mikey Bambrick and a few guys there just been.
James Dowling has stood up this year, and I tell you a chap we didn't mention too much of, Darragh Fitzgerald in close to goal.
Darragh Fitzgerald very good in close to goal, and then obviously you have Seamus and you have a few other lads there that are still punching around, and have done really, really well. Had that Rathvilly scoreline not been there last week, would we be looking at this a little bit differently? I think we probably would. You'd be certainly fancying O'Loughlin. I still fancied O'Loughlin, in recent weeks. But this is all the hallmarks of a classic.
I think so, yeah. And it was a great game last year. It was a crucial game in the championship last year, and a contender for a game of the championship.
Yeah.
And Rathvilly went out of the championship last year without losing on the field of play, I will say, during normal time and extra time. When it was a game of football and when it didn't go to penalties, they got knocked out because of penalties. But I think, didn't they win every other game? I'm nearly sure they did.
I think they had one draw.
Maybe they had a draw, actually. They're undefeated anyway.
They're undefeated,
yeah, which is a bit mad, of course. But, I mean, it is an incredibly difficult one to call. If we see anything like the Rathvilly that took to the field against Bidenstown, and if we see anything like the O'Loughlin team that has been taken to nearly every game and what they've been bringing, we are in for a classic. Is there any sort of a possibility that we could end up with a dour affair? I'm not quite sure we will, even if, I don't know what the weather is to be like. There's so much pace on each side. There is going to be scores. I think there's going to be goals as well. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a few goals in it.
I'd be surprised if there wasn't a lot of goals, to be honest with you. Of course, it depends on... both of them are kind of playing a little bit of a similar style insofar as it's breaking. It's ball that's breaking, they're holding up the ball and then they're deciding to, let's see if we can get a runner. Maybe Rathvilly play a little bit more direct sometimes, depending on who they have inside. But certainly the O'Loughlin game is running. It is running. Will anybody change their style potentially that could lead it to be a little bit more cagey, let's say? I'm not so sure they will. I'm not so sure they will. I think, both teams will probably stick to what's got them there. And we could have a serious shootout. Yeah,
you're going O'Loughlin,
yeah, marginally, I think O'Loughlin, just on form prior to last weekend.
I have a hesitant O'Loughlin vote as well. And I think there was possibly... a theory out there that I was going to O'Loughlin because I'm from O'Loughlin. Now, that would be like you wearing a Rathvilly jersey, which is just not going to happen, right? I have no affiliation to O'Loughlin. Loughlin Bridge, out and out. But I have kind of had a hankering for them. Before a ball was kicked, they are still moving well. I think I'll stick to my guns on that one. But I do think it will be hesitant on this particular occasion, Paul.
Oh, yeah, no, I think so as well. And in fairness, Rathvilly, you got to hand it to them. They produce fantastic football teams. It's a small place, a bit like our own. Probably not overly flush with numbers. Sometimes you are, and sometimes you're not. But they've achieved an amazing amount of victories over the years. I suppose I went with O'Loughlin in our previous podcast prior to the championship. And I can't I can't change horses at this stage.
You can if you want.
Would you be surprised if Rathvilly beat O'Loughlin? No. Of course you wouldn't, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So
plain and simple.
But I think it'll be potentially anyway the most entertaining game of the weekend.
Yeah. The Camogie Championships have reached semi-finals at senior as well, and Michael obviously still in the hunt. Nail Breed still in the hunt. They've been in the last number of finals. They are opposite each other in the semi-finals. That's coming up soon, of course. The under-14 Camogie finals were last week in Netwatch Cullen Park, so I'll give a shout out to everyone there, and well done to all the teams that were involved in that. The senior relegation final is not this weekend. It is the week after. I may get a word with you because I don't know if we'll have you next week or not. We'll see how things go as you. But I think obviously you'll give your own club a fair squeak considering the discontent that's been going on with Tinryland and the performances that Clonmore put into date. You'd have to say, would Clonmore be favourites in this one, despite the fact that Rathvilly have been in the last two finals? On form, you'd say possibly.
On form, you'd say absolutely. I'd say I suppose again it gets back to the issue in relation to the championship and maybe our format and stuff like that, and that's for other people to look at. But I suppose. And
you were saying this before Clonmore were in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But if you look at the Clonmore situation, played the last three county championships or the last three county champions in our group, and lost by a combined total of 8 points, which it'd be very, very harsh. But at the end of the day, counts for nothing. You have to beat the team that's the bottom of the other group, and that's it. That's how you deserve to be there for the following year. I suppose look at the Tinryland situation. It's been well versed, well talked about, and everything there. But Tinryland have a history. Like Tinryland have been a senior team
for 20
as long
years.
as we can. As a lot of young fellas that are playing maybe in our team can remember.
Won in 04. I think they came up in 04, Paul.
They did.
My own club, Loughlin Bridge, went down into me the same year.
That's right. Yeah. Last two county finals. Again they have muscle memory, mentally and otherwise, to remain senior. So that's going to be and muscle
management now as well, because Keogh's gone in as selector.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I won't be talking to Keogh next week at all. There'll be a media blanket between me and Keogh. But having said that, in fairness, history counts too. It's going to be very, very difficult and very, very tricky. Obviously, I'd certainly say that Clonmore have more than enough to win it.
Yeah.
But this is not going to be easy.
Won't be simple.
And I think it's unfortunate. I suppose for both clubs that you find yourself in that position.
Would it be enough people in both clubs to make noise at board level to try and encourage maybe a restructuring of sorts, Paul? Do you think?
I think restructurings though have to be planned, and I think restructurings have to be.
Fighting Cocks proved that years ago.
Exactly, and I think restructurings have to be advised to clubs well in advance and all of that people know what they're doing. I suppose looking from our point of view, I remember a couple of years ago, obviously we went back down to Junior A by virtue, I think it was the sort of post-COVID era,
double relegation,
where we didn't even have a relegation final or playoff. So on the other hand, it's good to have the chance now for both teams to put it right. This for both clubs is as big a game as they've played in the last probably 10 years. Massive, absolutely massive, because you can, if you solidify yourself there and you can, add a few lads to a squad, you can start competing again next year,
Mm-hmm. So that's on the weekend after next. I don't know what else is on, because there is a break from the semi-finals into the final to allow for any replays, of course, as well. So the final is this weekend, 2 weeks, we'll say. I think we've covered a lot of ground there, Paul. And
we probably have, Kev. I just would say that I suppose, look at, in fairness to yourselves and everybody who's associated with left wing back, it's hard to cover everything.
Yeah.
So if people, kind of notify us or whatever, notify yourself in relation to results and stuff like that, and if you look at minor, we don't really know what's going on too much there.
info@leftwingback.com is our email address. Yeah, people could send us in information, and I'm saying it with the camogie side of things and ladies football as well. Emo's in leash. info@leftwingback.com is our email address, and you're spot on. Yeah. I'm glad you brought this up, because I would have forgot.
Yeah, no, if people send stuff in, I'm sure you'll publicise it, and it can only be a good thing that particularly things like minor and stuff, it does go under the radar, but you can't cover everything.
Well, that's the thing. Give us the lemons, we'll make the lemonade.
Absolutely.
And you get a lemonade down in the An Bhearu Bar downstairs here as well in Talbot. We'll leave it at that. We'll say thanks to all our sponsors, in particular today to the Talbot Hotel here in Carlow, where we're filming our podcast, and obviously the audio out on Spotify and Apple. You'll get the video up on YouTube. If you're looking at it already, you know that, but if anyone is listening and wants to have a look at Fisher's beautiful face afterwards, it will be up on YouTube. Thanks again to An Bhearu. Thanks to Talbot Carlow. Thanks to Talbot Fitness. Thanks to Paul Byrne, and to Keelan, our sound engineer. Over and out.